My name is John Passfield, and this reading will be John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt, Video 16, the last chapter. So here is the cover, John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt, a novella by John Passfield. As writer John Passfield is driving home from a December book discussion meeting and thinking about the Christmas topics that were discussed, in particular Dickens, who wrote a novella that transformed the world's conception of Christmas, he suddenly finds himself sitting in a sleigh pulled by Rudolph and 8 tiny reindeer. What an excellent opportunity to ask Santa about a 70-year-old puzzle, the mystery of the missing cowboy shirt. The story begins with a chapter of John driving home from a meeting. It ends with a chapter of John turning into the driveway of his house. Now, there are 12 image units that tell the story of the last chapter, chapter 10. So let's go to page 85, and I'll read just the story of the last chapter. There's other imagery that helps interpret the story, but here's just the story. What I call the outer frame. Oh, here I am, pulling into the driveway. Back again, driving my car. Well, that's the end, I guess, of Santa Claus, for me. I'm sure I didn't fall asleep at the wheel. Surely the car hasn't been driving itself. If I was asleep, I would have been sure to go off the road. And then we move on to, amazing how many thoughts a person can have in only a few miles. It's only 2 or 3 miles from the meeting place to here. Or 5 or 6 kilometers, I guess we're supposed to say. Well, the mind certainly works on many levels. We think on many levels at a single moment in time. You can think about baking a cake or writing a book, and all the while, your mind is driving your car. I don't think I'll ever be able to rival Charles Dickens. Don't think I'll ever make up an iconic story that will alter the nature of how we think at Christmas time. Not the kind of writer to write that kind of book. I'll be glad to get myself back to Shakespeare and Cleopatra's. I'm just going to hold something up for a second. This isn't published yet, but in chapter 1 and now in chapter 10, John refers to a book that he's just finished. This is a rough draft. The elastic maybe hides the fact that there's one blue eye and one brown eye in the Mummy, Shakespeare and Cleopatra. And so he's polishing this novel when he goes to this December meeting. So he's going to get back to that. So I'll be glad to get myself back to Shakespeare and Cleopatra, the novel. That's where I'm on my safest ground. There's plenty of thought there to keep me occupied. Caesar and Antony built themselves an empire. Cleopatra built herself a myth. Then Shakespeare came along and shuffled the cards. And then I came along and did it all over again. And then moving on. Wonder whether it'll snow for Christmas. Only about 2 weeks away. Let's see. Coffee cup to go in the garbage pail in the garage. Check the mailbox. It's Thursday today. Bring my bag along with my notes. They're still in the car. Wonder where that photograph got to. The one of me in my cowboy shirt. Probably in the little wooden box Dad made when we were just kids. Well, it was in the little wooden box, and here it is. A myth is a pile of sand. We're all children on the beach. Every grain has a place in the little sand castle. Then a wave comes and seems to sweep it all away. But the sand is always there. The sand is there after the children are called up to the cottage. It will be there long after all of us are gone. It'll be shaped by the water and by the wind. And then moving on. Should have been Aeschylus or Shakespeare. A society about to crack. It should have been Shakespeare along in the sleigh. A deeply troubled individual flails away. Think of Hamlet or Lear or Othello. Or maybe Homer, World's Intention. The clash of gods on a vast terrain. So somebody else couldn't have written a big Santa book, eh? But not me, I guess. I'm sure that if I were a different person, I'd phone the local news. Tell them I spent some time with Santa. Tell them what Santa had to say. Be picked up by the Canadian National Newscast. That would be picked up in turn by New York. And the talk shows, maybe a movie. How this guy was hosted by Santa, given a moment, an hour, or a day, taken to all the furthest places of which we're aware. And that Santa told him, what? Just what exactly did Santa have to say? Well, up the stairs and across the porch, just a handle on the doornail practically comes alive at Scrooge's approach. All it amounted to was John and Santa, an hour or two of talk. The topic was never the topic. Santa's secrets are Santa's secrets still. I didn't get him to open up and spill the beans. No, I don't think there's a novel in this. No novel at all. So that's the end of the story. John figuring, hey, there's no book here. I met Santa, but what happened? There's really nothing I can write about. So here's a note that I wrote about that. This novella is what is known as a frame story. It means that it tells a story within a story. The inner story is the story of a person who finds himself suddenly sitting beside Santa Claus in his sleigh, which is pulled by Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and 8 tiny reindeer to the various places around the world that interest Santa. The outer story is of a man who has attended a Christmas book discussion meeting and is quite interested in all the topics that were discussed. The topics all have to do with the elements that make up the myths of Christmas. 2 of the major myths of Christmas are the myth of Santa Claus and the myth that was created by Charles Dickens in his novella, A Christmas Carol. Now, what intrigues the main character, John, me, about A Christmas Carol is that's the story of a person who is shown a series of scenes by another, 3 ghosts in this case, who explain the meaning of the spirit of Christmas time. So that idea is intriguing. A person who's shown a series of scenes by an explainer about Christmas. So in the first chapter, John is driving home from a Christmas book discussion meeting. As I was driving home late in the afternoon of December 9th, 2021, and in the last chapter, John, me again, turns into his driveway and resumes his everyday life in the real world. What intrigues him about what Dickens does in that novella is that Dickens takes certain elements that are already present in the minds of the people of his society and reworks them to create a Christmas myth, a personal Christmas myth. In his mind, as he is driving, John does the same. In our own minds, all of us do the same. We take the elements of any topic about which we think, we emphasize some of those elements, we de-emphasize other elements, we completely ignore some elements as well. In effect, creating a new version of every myth, of every topic about which we think. And this is exactly what John does in the book. So, if you ask me what my little book, John and Santa, the cowboy shirt, is all about, I would say it's about the way we humans think. So, once again, this is the novella, John and Santa, the cowboy shirt. There's more information on Amazon. There's more information at Rocks Mills Press, which is my publisher's website. And at John Passfield CA, there's 2 free books just for clicking on them. my planning notebook in which I planned and wrote the novella, and my journal in which I reflected on the novella as I was polishing the rough draft. So thank you for watching this video.